Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Selling AI. Today we're diving into what it's like selling AI into one of the most conservative industries out there, legal. I have James Lawler on the show today, and James is the managing director and founder of TricoStar, an AI-powered time recording and email management platform built specifically for law firms. Here's what makes this conversation interesting. James is doing founder-led sales, which means he's in the trenches every day selling a product that promises to unlock 30% more billable time and save 90% on administrative drag. That's a really bold claim in an industry that's notoriously skeptical of new tech. In today's episodes, James and I talk about how he navigates selling AI to lawyers who are resistant to change, what his own sales process looks like as a founder, and the AI tools he's personally using to sell more effectively. And lastly, how his clients are actually starting to engage with his AI features. We'll also get into what he's learned the hard way about selling into traditional industries. All right, let's hop in. Hey, James, thank you so much for being here with us today to talk about selling AI into law firms. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Warren. No worries. Happy to be here. I appreciate you setting this up in with our respective time differences as well.
Oh, great. Cool. Well, first, can you give us a quick background on TricoStar and what problem you've historically been solving in the legal space and how that's shifting over the past year and going forward?
Yeah. So TricoStar was actually founded by my father in the late 80s. So I think we're in our 38th year this year, probably still one of the only independently owned legal tech suppliers in the UK. So we've been around for a long time. And the business started on the basis of time recording. This is when lawyers were probably doing it with pen and paper. And we developed this little tool for the Scion. Most people probably won't even know what that is, but it looks like a mini laptop. And it had a big old memory card in it. And we developed this little piece of software. You could take the Scion to a meeting. You could hit spacebar, record your time, type your notes in, and then bring it back to the office, plug that memory card into a central mainframe, and it would upload all the time. And you'd have an electronic timesheet or electronically created timesheet. And that really went all the way through the 90s until turn of the century when we developed our first case management system. We've always been predominantly in government, not because we didn't want to go into private sector, it's just a niche we found ourselves in. So we work with lots of local government and central government legal teams, some quite high profile teams as well, who have a lot of data governance and data security requirements. And that has naturally evolved where we are today. And I suppose this is a very short summary of what we've done, but the natural evolution is now into how can we use AI to make that process more efficient. So it's something, I suppose we've been making the process more efficient since we started the business in the late 80s. And I took over as managing director, albeit I've been here for nearly 20 years. I took over as managing director a few years ago. And one of the things I started to look at was like, okay, how do we use AI to make time recording more efficient? Same goes for the email management that you've mentioned as well. So we work with a Canadian-based company called Colligo, who have a really cool add-in for Microsoft Outlook, which helps manage all the filing and governance of emails, because we all live in our mailboxes and tend to use them as storage repositories. Which makes it really easy for us to find things, but not for our colleagues, which in legal, when a lot of that is considered evidence, it's obviously really important that that is filed away to a place where it can be accessed.
That's awesome. That's really cool. The evolution from, let's say, the first iteration of like non-paper time tracking to now, like 40 years later, you're talking about how you can use AI to almost infer billable hours from the work is really fascinating. Let's dive in. So tell me a little bit more. How are you using AI to solve that problem now?
Yeah, so I knew it was something we had to look at. And in fact, we initially had a look at, okay, do we build this or do we buy it? We developed our previous time recording system. How far advanced is it now? And actually I ended up finding a business which had just come out of stealth, based in San Francisco now, called Billables AI, and had a look at their product. I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. So I didn't actually, we didn't end up developing our own solution for this at all, because at the time, we were in the midst of actually developing our next gen case management system. So back in December 24 now, just before Christmas, much to my wife's dismay, I jumped on a plane to San Francisco, went and met with the team, and did a deal with them to bring this exclusively to the UK through TricoStar. And I suppose the way that people have time recorded, since the 70s hasn't really changed, right? The way that lawyers, or what lawyers need to do, is have a time entry which states what the matter is, who the client is, what they were doing, how long they spent doing it, and what the activity is. That actually hasn't changed. But I know it's a process they all loathe. They hate doing it, right? They forget. And so you're trying to figure out what you were doing on certain days or times of the week. You don't put enough of a narrative in there, so it gets written off because a client goes, well, you've given me a charge for this, but there's no explanation as to what it was actually for. Or they just undercharge because it's not necessarily happening in the moment, albeit, there are tools available to manually record time. It's a very disciplined task and exercise. You end up missing out on potentially billable hours as well. So I suppose this is where the whole premise that you mentioned at the beginning, in terms of capturing 30% more billable hours and reducing the administration of actual time recording by up to 90%, like down to almost an hour a week. That's where it comes from.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean that's an incredible evolution. Was there something in particular that like LLMs have kind of unlocked that like is able to use? What's the actual function of the LLM?
Yeah, so I suppose passive time recording, or how we refer to it is passive time recording, i.e. it's hands off. You don't have to actually click any buttons to make it happen. The actual technology itself in terms of passive time recording isn't new. That's been around for a few years now. But the way it's been done is typically through taking, let's say, screenshots of your desktop or your laptop periodically, and then inferring from those what you were doing, and building a picture based on that. Now that generates privacy concerns. I don't know if you're like me, but I've got windows and tabs all over the place, and I'm switching between them all the time. So it creates problems in terms of like, okay, how are you actually spending your time and what on? And it's not cross-device compatible in the sense of I can't move from one, like say writing an email on my desktop to then jumping on a train and carrying on the work that I was doing on my phone, without that becoming a new time entry. So, but it does exist as a technology. So passive time recording, the ability to not kind of have to time record or significantly reduce how much time you spend doing it, does already exist. How LLMs have changed that, and how technology has changed that, is really, I suppose, what billables have been able to achieve with their solution, and that is twofold. One is we now, because of cloud computing, SaaS, etc., now we can integrate directly into the platform we actually want to record time from. So to keep that really simple, you sign in with your Office 365 or Gmail address, and as you access your email or as you go to a document in OneDrive or SharePoint, or on your desktop, the time is recorded. We know you're there and we can record that time. And where we've been able to go one step further is that with LLMs, they can now determine what you were doing whilst you were there, what you were reading or what you were writing or drafting, and take a summary from that on your behalf, and then produce a narrative for your customer.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Okay, cool. Let's pivot a little bit to sales process. As you're kind of like managing a sales process yourself, and on top of it, kind of like taking a big shift in like product and what you're actually pitching along the way. How has your sales process evolved over the past couple of years, and what does a typical like deal look like for you now?
Yeah, I mean, it's I suppose the same sales principles still exist, right? We're still all following the same principles of needing to understand who our technical buyer is, who the budget holders are, all those kind of things. I don't think any of those things have actually really changed for me. I think the speed at which you can get a sale to close has definitely gone up. I also think people I think people want to make decisions quicker. When they know they want or need something, or discover they have a need for a certain technology, they want to see it implemented as quickly as possible as well. So I suppose it wouldn't be very good of me to be selling products which help make people more efficient through the use of AI without actually implementing it myself.
Right.
And that started very, very basically, I suppose, with the likes of using ChatGPT, Copilot we use internally now as well to help us plug gaps. I think the thing is when you're trying to juggle lots of different sales processes across multiple opportunities, it's really easy to miss something, or forget that to ask a certain question. And so I would say, and I've always said this about AI anyways, you should always see AI as an assistant, right? It can take over what you do, but I've yet to experience a sales process where I have been completely hands off. And like you say, I'm a founder-led sales as well. So I've got a business to run at the same time. So for me, it's been about using tools that fill in the gaps for me, or give me feedback on how my sales process is going based on what it can infer from emails that I am sending or receiving, documentation that I provided, demos that I've given and are transcribed, questions that have been asked by the client in that time, to make sure that we tick all the boxes we need to get to the end. And actually it's made it easier. One thing I love about Copilot, especially when we're doing online sales meetings, is that it's there in the moment. So I can actually, I'm not the greatest at multitasking, but I've got better at it. In the moment, I can ask Copilot questions like, have I spoken about this? What question did they ask me 5 minutes ago, and how did I answer it? Did I include an explanation of X, Y, or Z? So in the moment, it's been really helpful as well.
Yes.
And obviously, afterwards, I've not got to even think about what my follow-up actions are, because those things are all being produced for me based on the process that I'm following and what was said and recorded during those meetings. And in fact, I've gone as far as even in-person meetings, recording those now and transcribing them, having them transcribed automatically so that I don't have to think about it too much.
That's awesome. So you're using live transcription when you're having a meeting and talking to Copilot about the meeting as well. Do you have like a specific example that's come up like recently on a call?
There will be, especially if I've got someone from technical pre-sales with me, so it's not just me in the room. Effectively, there'll be questions that are asked that they're answering. Sometimes, one thing I've found it really good for, actually, Warren, is turning things into plain language, like plain speak, or trying to use a real world example of how to give context. So let's say, for example, a client asks a really, really technical question. Because I'm technical, I can sometimes fall into the trap of giving them a technical response. And actually, they're just a lawyer, right? They just want to know, how is this going to make my life easier? Like, what context can you give me? So I'll always use things, usually personal interests of mine, unless I've had time to spend a bit of time with the person I'm speaking to find out what their personal interests are. I might liken it to how, all cars have four wheels and will go around a racetrack, but certain cars will do it quicker than other cars. Some cars will do it more efficiently. Some cars will go for longer without having to refuel, because I'm into motorsports. Right. So that's where I found it really helpful, actually, in those kind of in the moment scenarios that help people get the context of what you're actually trying to help them understand.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. In particular, selling into law firms, have you found that they've been skeptical of like generative AI technology, receptive, open, seeking? How are those conversations gone, and how have you navigated the sales process that way?
It's a funny one. So I suppose they've been using generative AI quite extensively, I would say, in kind of drafting and reviewing documentation for quite a while. That's quite normal to them. Obviously, we don't sit on that side of the fence, really. We're on the much more on the administrative side of what they do, the bit they really do hate doing. It's not, it's not what they trained to do. So it is met with some skepticism. I think skepticism actually leans more towards the privacy side of things.
Yeah.
Instead of, can this make my life easier? And what I mean by that is, in our instance, when we're capturing time passively on behalf of a lawyer, and the whole idea is that they don't need to check the timesheet until the end of the day. They can just come and review what's there. But that does mean that if they, went and checked the football scores, or were looking to book a holiday or buy something on Amazon, that time's getting recorded. So actually one of the biggest pushbacks I get is, well, I don't want my private interactions being recorded alongside my work interactions. Obviously we manage that. We make sure their timesheets are private until they release what's there. But yeah, that's the biggest level of skepticism, because I think from most people, they're not talking to us unless they are interested in how AI can make their life easier, right? They all know it can. One really interesting thing I was thinking about actually, though, was when it comes to using AI, I think in any industry, but specifically legal, one of the things that we've always focused on in our sales messaging, and I came to realize this wasn't necessarily the right approach all the time. We've already done it in this call, is we've talked about how much time someone can save and therefore how much more time they can bill. But it doesn't always take into consideration the human aspect of work, which is we're all looking for a better work-life balance. Actually, sometimes I'm not looking to bill more. I just want to spend more time with my family. So how do I achieve that? So you take AI time recording as an example. Actually, what I'm helping lawyers to do is capture time they were missing. So before they were working 6 hours a day, or let's say they're working 8 hours a day and capturing 6 hours of billable time as a result.
Right.
Now they only have to work 6 hours a day to capture. Well, let's not be unrealistic. Let's say they only have to work 6.5 hours a day to capture 6 hours of billable time, because it was done for them, right? So they get an hour and a half back to go and do the things they like to do. And I've literally had this conversation with a lawyer who was like, "Yeah, I just want to play more golf. I don't want to actually have to do more work." So I think it's really interesting sometimes that you have to, again, being techies, and it also being a very billing-led profession, right? That's it. It's an exchange of time for money. It's really easy to fall into the trap of just being like, okay, well, you can bill, these extra hours, and therefore your firm can do another like 1 million, 2 million, 3 million in revenue every year. But some people aren't looking for that. They're looking for time back by being more efficient.
Yeah, that's a good call out. It's almost like what you're doing is eliminating work that's not value added for anyone and that no one likes doing, right? So their clients aren't better off when they track their time, right? Like it's not work that matters, right? So like it's almost like, what's it for you to say what they're going to do with that time? Like who cares, right? Like, so you're going to get your time back. You don't like doing this work. And it's not the most expensive solution in the world, right? It's like it's relatively inexpensive to do these things. However you see fit to do that time is great. Honestly, and on top of it, you're going to more accurately bill. So that's an interesting way to look at the sales process there. How are you finding anything specific on the privacy aspect, other than like reviewing your timesheet at the end of the day before it's public to the org? Is there any concerns about like the data that like the LLMs or your application's accessing, or that you had to get around?
No, we don't. I mean, we don't store it, so we use it. We actually, the way the LLM uses the data that it generates for the timesheet is that it does inform future narratives. So if I have a certain style of writing, whether I like to even if I go as far as writing long narratives or short narratives, or I don't use people's names, I always use their initials, things like that, it will automatically change over time for me so that it's much more in my style. But we don't store any of that data that we then produce anywhere. It gets deleted. So it's learning, and it's applying that learning to a model that it then uses for future narrative generation, but it's not then keeping that data or doing anything else with it.
And you found that answer sufficient. People are like, great.
Yeah,
like they moved
most it's like, I think the problem, especially time recording, it's a very big brother type process, right? And it's a necessary evil, because most firms are set up to record time, give a breakdown to a client of how their time was spent, what they were doing, and that's how they get paid. And if that's not accurate enough or not detailed enough, they end up writing it off because the client argues with them, and it's costing them more to go and try and justify the time, because they've got no way of justifying what they were doing, than just saying, okay, don't worry about it. So we're trying to reduce the level of, the level of write-off as well.
Right.
And ultimately, it just means people can focus on what they train to do, which is become lawyers.
Right.
There's an interesting conversation going on, I think constantly going on. But there's two things actually that come to mind. One is fixed fee work. So I think a lot of, to try and stay competitive, firms are really interested in like the fixed fee conversation, like, for this type of work, we charge a fixed fee. And that's creating some interesting conversations in sales, because a lot of them will go, oh, well, we're moving to fixed fee. And I go, okay, but how do you know that you're charging the right amount?
Right.
And they, often they'll go, well, we've got years of experience of doing this type of work, and so this is what we know how to charge. And I said, well, you've got years of experience of charging the way that you do, but do you know if that's the most efficient way to do it? So that's one particular conversation which I think is really interesting, and I think an area where we can also help firms budget better when it comes to proposing fixed fee work.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's a funny narrative around, like, actually the technology out there could change fundamentally how an industry is charging, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, I think if let's say the most base level of like junior paralegal and attorney work is relatively automatable, right? Then you're doing more valuable strategic work, but you're doing it in a lot less time, right? So like, what's the juxtaposition? One, let's say corporate clients are going to ask for that time. Like, you shouldn't charge me what you used to. But in the same token, then the value of the strategic work just goes up, right? So like, cool. Yeah. So then that moves that to like, let's move to fixed fee, right? Like, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Then like, it's you now have like a completely different meaning as to what time means. Now time is an efficiency standpoint, right? Like, how much does it take? How much should I bill? And then on a particular project, like, did I make money or did I really end up losing money? So you're like, now you're tracking time in a more traditional sense of like an optimization problem. Is that how your customers are seeing it? Are you having to explain that? Like, how's that going?
Depends who you're talking to in the firm. Obviously, operationally, they kind of get it, but the lawyers just need to record their time, and the lawyers understand they just need to record their time to allow them to even arrive at that kind of ability to make those kind of decisions. I think one really interesting point you kind of angle on there, and it's something that I think is a buzzword that won't go away, is efficiency. And certainly in the UK, in the big city law firms, their rates are very high. I mean, they're skilled people, so that we expect it. But for somebody who's putting their hand in their own back pocket to pay for something, paying £800 for a letter, can seem very, very expensive. And the reason I say this is because if they're efficient, obviously they can charge more, and you can see that they're efficient. But it does, it does. I think it's going to create a slight problem, or it could create a slight problem. This is kind of the things that people are talking about but don't want to admit are happening, and that is, where will AI take take the jobs away from those
Right.
people. I don't think it's going to take the jobs away from lawyers, because lawyers are still needed to do the really heavy lifting. AI just makes them more efficient at what they do. I think where the issue comes is where we believe what a paralegal could do can be completely automated, and therefore do they stop hiring paralegals to do those things? But what happens when that workforce ages, right? Where does all the new skill come from, or where does the next generation come into that in terms of carrying on that level of skill? So you can see it in one of two ways. You could either say they could shoot themselves in the foot if they decide to automate what I would call, paralegal, low-level assistant junior work, because they won't have any juniors who then become seniors to carry on the work. Or you could you could look at it from a positive perspective and say, well, actually, we shouldn't actually get rid of our paralegals. We shouldn't get rid of our juniors or the amount that we hire. We can just upskill them much quicker. They can become seniors so much more quickly, because all of that menial, automatable work now doesn't need to be done by them. They can use AI to do it. So I think that's I think it's a massive opportunity for lawyers who are charging high fees and using AI to make themselves more efficient, actually to bring juniors up to skill, other than, I suppose, experience in terms of time in court and all those things, much more quickly. Sorry, I've gone slightly off track there, but it's kind of just one of the themes.
It's a common theme, right? Like it's in these conversations, I'm seeing this come up over and over again. It's actually that the new technology is bubbling up old processes, right? So we talk a lot about how we think AI, we're worried that AI is going to tear at the fabric of the human to human relationship. But in a lot of the conversations I've had, it actually shows that like it can like elevate that human relationship in a better way. This scenario is a little bit different. This life cycle you talk about there is, let's say we, in a worst case scenario where it ends up completely eliminating the entry level in a bunch of different professions, right? Like engineering, business development, like entry level roles end up being 80 to 90% like automatable, and then the 10% just goes into the mid-level or senior level roles, right? Cool. Well, you still need mid-level and senior level people. You end up in almost a scenario where you need to go back to apprenticeship programs, right? And if you do that, right, like if you're going to take on an employee, great, I'm going to hire someone at the entry level of the legal profession with hopes that they become mid-level senior. It's a good perspective that, one, they could do that faster, but two, then we're going to have to end up into a relationship where like, great, I'm going to pay you and not get any value for a while, right? Like out of it. And then when I can get value of you, I can't have you leave, right? So you're going to end up in a scenario where you're going to have like contracts, right? Like 5-year programs where like you get paid for 3 years to learn, and then you give me 2 years at a lower rate, and then hopefully my culture is so great that you stay longer. That's how we used to do manufacturing jobs, right? So like
it's how the military do it now. If you want to, if you want to go into a high level military position, you want to become a fighter pilot, right? You commit an amount of years to that role, because the military know you're not going to be effective as a fighter pilot for the first 12 to 24 months that you're in the role, right? So it'd be interesting to see that spill down.
Right? Like it's kind of funny to think that you could end up in a scenario. For a while, junior level roles were great because they were inexpensive ways to do work that senior level folks didn't want to do. If AI becomes that inexpensive way, then we're going to have to find ways to bridge that gap, which could end up being employment contracts for a while, right? Which is interesting. Cool. Let's dive in just a little bit. So on the sales process, let's dovetail back to this. Do you find that like your prospective customers care like about how the AI is doing it, or do they more care about just the result? Could you literally be like, great, like from a sales process standpoint, we want to do time tracking. We know we spend time on it. We don't want to spend time on it anymore. And we think there's relatively inexpensive ways to do that. You seem to be one of the best 4 providers out there that can do this. I like you. Let's try it. And if it works, I'll buy it. Or is there still a decent amount of like having to explain how you get to the end result when you're selling this time tracking solution?
I think it's a mix. And it's a mix because it depends on where they are in their understanding. And, if they're at discovery stage, then you've got to teach them what these things do. If you come in a bit later into the process, then they might already understand how a tool like yours works, but you're obviously playing catch up from a rapport perspective and a trust perspective. I don't think they even necessarily need to know that you're using AI to assist the sales process. I hope I don't make it obvious. I want it to feel human, because people buy from people, right? They like having a face-to-face conversation. I think is still incredibly valuable, especially in when you're doing B2B type sales. So my sales process, certainly from the perspective of AI, is still trying to keep it as human as possible, just using AI to assist me in making sure that I've ticked the boxes I need to tick, or I haven't missed anything glaringly obvious. And that could be that could be something nuanced in a conversation that we had that I missed, right? But at least I can use AI to say, have I interpreted this correctly, or have I missed something, or do I need to be asking more questions? I think one of the biggest problems that I've always had as a salesperson, where sales cycles are a bit longer, is keeping some level of dialogue up with that person or that prospect, which doesn't just feel like I'm sending them some boilerplate information that I do to everybody. It feels like I'm thinking about their problems and trying to come up with solutions for it, or innovative ways of approaching something. So I've used AI to help me with that. I mean, like Topic, that's really good, because you can actually have a conversation with Ada, the assistant, and say, look, I've got this problem, or we haven't spoken for this long, and this was the last conversation we had, and I don't want to just fill their mailbox with something which isn't actually of use to them, or feels like I'm just trying to be a name in their mailbox. I want it to be something that I feel like they can action. And it's got to be succinct. I think this is the other thing is, mirroring. We all, when you're actually speaking with somebody, or you selling to them, is you've got to mirror their behaviour, right? So if they write short emails, you write short emails back. If they give you long-winded answers, you aim to give them as much detail back as you can. So I think, and again, I forget this all the time. I'm telling you these things that I know I should be doing, but I get into the moment and sometimes I forget. So actually having an AI assistant to help you, or bring you back down to earth and not get too excited about things, is really helpful. So yeah, I'd hope they don't know AI is there, but I'm using it all the time to try and improve the way that I sell.
Like looking 2 to 3 years ahead, either in the legal profession or how we're selling or anything process wise, give me like a hot take you have about where things might evolve.
Well, hot take on, I think in the legal profession, I don't think the time recording will ever go away. They've talked about moving to fixed fees for years and years, and it's never really happened. I think we'll make it easier for them to budget what fixed fees should be. But I don't think it'll go away. I think hot take is one there we've already discussed, is that potentially they could inadvertently do away with paralegals and juniors, when actually they should be upskilling them and should have contracts. I think in business, from a sales perspective, I think we'll be in a position, we probably already are, it's whether people can change their behaviour. We'll be in a position where we probably can operate as a 2-3 person sales team, but there'll just be one of us. There will be virtual assistants there handling most of the grunt work for us, but they'll have to be taught that based on processes that we already have in place. I don't know if that's a particularly hot take, but I know I'd certainly like to feel that way. I'd certainly like to feel like I'm not trying to run a business and everything that comes with that, and also trying to lead a sales team. I'd like to feel like actually that there's an assistant there who can do most of the job for me, other than the human touch points that need to be there.
That's awesome, man. That's great. Cool. Well, to wrap it up, where can people find you? Or in particular, if like your potential customers wanted to reach out to you, who would they be, and how should they reach out? And anything you got to plug there? Well,
I mean, we're on LinkedIn, so you'll find us as TricoStar, which is a TRICOSTAR. So you'll find us on LinkedIn as TricoStar. They can drop me an email, james.lawler@tricostar.com. and I'll be more than happy to speak to anybody who's got an interest in what we're doing, or just wants some advice, on how they can be doing things better from an AI perspective.
Yeah, James, that's great to hear. Obviously, your perspective in this specific area, like legal tech, moving from just like time recording and the Scion, which I had never heard of before, and progressing through to where we are now, it's just fascinating, and one of the leaders in the space. So I really appreciate taking the time with us today.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers, Warren. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.